Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Urshel Speaks. I'm really excited about what's going on. My mission is to be the right man at the right time, saying the right words because I want to see change, growth, and absolutely make a difference in the lives of those that are listening, starting with my own. And you know it, you've heard me say it over and over again. I am not afraid to be wrong. I'm afraid to stay wrong. And so today I want to have a conversation. I have a great friend that I really admire and is a great supporter. She's going to be joining us. Um, but I want to tell you, I think I told you last week, or maybe I mentioned it before, February 28th. I was in a car accident. My head got banged around, my body got banged around. And since that time, a lot has been going on with me. Rehab therapy, dealing with lawyers, insurance, and all of these things. And I wanted to share with you something, and just in a way to introduce our conversation today, um, that, now, today, I'm doing some things differently. Um, I am taking in the morning, I'm taking cold showers. I hate cold showers. I absolutely do not like cold showers, but I'm taking them because of the impact that it has on the body and the inflammation in the body and other things that it can stimulate. I'm I'm brushing my teeth every morning. Yes, you're welcome. I'm brushing my teeth every morning, but I'm doing it with my left hand. I'm right-handed for 50 years. Every day that I've brushed my teeth, it's been with my right hand. Now I'm doing it with my left hand. And the reason why is because this is automatic and it's without any thought. I can just do it because that's the way that I've always done it. Now I'm brushing my teeth with my left hand and I have to think about it. I have to think about the movements, and it's actually challenging my brain and pushing my brain. I'm doing it because it's more difficult, and I'm doing that on purpose. And there are several things: the cold showers, brushing my teeth with my left hand, doing these other things, challenging myself because I know what's in front of me. I know I have some goals and some things that I'm trying to accomplish. I know that I have some challenges because of what has happened recently in my past, that my brain needs some work to get better. And I know that I've set some high bars for what I want to accomplish in the next few years. And so if I want to be who I say it I want to be, if I want to accomplish, if I want to achieve, then it's not enough for me to just do things naturally, easily, take the easiest route to getting there, because sometimes you won't get there or it may take longer to get there. So I'm going through this period where, because something bad happened, because I got T-boned by a truck, in an effort to get stronger, healthier, and better, I'm not just doing what the chiropractor says do. I'm not just doing what the pain management doctor says do. Um, I am purposely putting myself in situations where I have an opportunity to get better, and that getting better is as a result of doing things I don't have to do. It would be easier to not do them, but I'm making my brain. Eric Castaneda just chimed in. You're exactly right, brother. I mean, I am rewiring, reconfiguring pathways in my brain so that it's more efficient, so that it's stronger, so that it's better. And and I feel that that is absolutely part of the conversation that I want to have today. I have a great guest on the show. Again, it's someone that I consider a friend, but I consider it an honor to be friends with her and her husband. Um, so I'd like to introduce some of you to Shannon Kmak. Shannon, good morning. Welcome to Urshel Speaks.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here, truly.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. And Shannon, we met several years ago through an organization called Leadership Plano, and it was kind of one of those great things. I came home, bragging to my wife about this really awesome person that I met in Leadership Plano, and my wife was like, "What? I already know her from junior league."
Exactly.
I think you were going to be the incoming president of junior league that year. And so, Shannon, just tell us a little bit about. I mean, I know you're involved in so many different things. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what's important to you and what's going on in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Shannon Kmak, and I'm a longtime resident of Plano, Texas, and I'm very involved in my community. So I am a past president of Junior League of Collin County, which is a women's volunteer organization focused on improving the community and creating trained leader women. And so I'm just very proud of my 10-year involvement in that organization. And as Urshel said, Leadership Plano, which is all about creating leaders for our community. And I am a graduate of Leadership Plano Class 32, which was about 6 years ago. And now I am the program director for that program, which is a initiative of the Plano Chamber of Commerce. So I'm just really happy to be here. But I'm all about just getting involved in my community, understanding where I can use my time, talents, and treasures to make our world a better place.
Awesome, and that's all I've ever seen or known of you. Now, as far as the career, what is it that you've done in the 5 or 6 years since you graduated high school?
Well, right now, professionally, I am the VP of marketing for a company called Mission Advancement, and we advise nonprofits and independent schools on fundraising and helping them with capital campaigns and just annual planning, etc. I love my job because it helps me keep one foot in that nonprofit community and really seeing the change. I think that nonprofits are essential to a well-run and balanced community, and they really kind of help us fill that gap. And so being working with so many nonprofits and being able to help them is just a passion of mine. So I love what I do.
And it's so obvious, and how well you do it. And again, we had met through Leadership Plano, and then a couple of years later, I actually got involved with an organization called Honor, Courage, Commitment, and they had started an initiative called 22 Kill. And I remember reaching out to you and said, "Hey, I'm going to do a fundraiser for this organization that I just started with," and you and your husband Mark, you guys were some of the early supporters of that organization.
Yeah, my brother is a Army veteran, and so just through that experience and his tours and reaching out to that community, we were introduced to all sorts of people in the veteran community and got involved in Honor, Courage, Commitment. And from there, was introduced over to the Fort Worth recruiting station for the Marine Corps and started helping them specifically with our veterans who were coming home. And in the recruiting station for Fort Worth covers such a massive area. It's from Fort Worth all the way into West Texas, as far as Lubbock and beyond. And so what they were finding is that these men were coming home from the battle, men and women were coming home from the battlefield and being put in a recruiting station that perhaps put them in a community where they felt very isolated, and they were no longer surrounded with the camaraderie. And they're talking to young people and trying to get them to come in, but they're also battling with just reacclimating to society. And so they said, we're having some issues, just mental issues, financial issues, etc. Help us come in and do a family readiness program. And so we worked with the recruiting station of Fort Worth and the commander at the time to bring in financial speakers, bring in all sorts of things, and also to put on events for the wives, because in many cases the wife just didn't, or the spouse, I apologize, I know in this particular instance we were dealing mainly with male veterans and their wives, so I apologize. But working with the spouses to understand, because in so many cases the Marine was coming back home, and here is a spouse who thinks, okay, that's over, right? You're home now, and not really having the language to communicate the right words, or even understanding what was happening mentally. And so we also helped on that side as well. So it was a very rewarding program.
That is awesome. And, in all of our conversations, until I read the bio that you sent me, I didn't know about that, but it just goes on to validate, everything that I've ever, known about you and your husband. And then one other thing, I don't think it's really a secret anymore, but apparently this guy that you're married to, when he goes outside and gets on that grill, it seems like he is a master black belt ninja, monster type of dude.
Yes. I think he's tuning in right now, so he's probably giggling. But I do remember when we first started dating. So my husband Mark is from Nebraska, and so we still go to Nebraska and buy beef and bring it home. And when we first started dating, he's like, I'm going to cook you the best steak you've ever had. And I'm just like, I'm not really much of a red meat eater, but whatever. And I'm such a steak snob now. Like when we go out, I'm like, nah, I have the best steak at home. I don't eat steaks when we're at the restaurant. Like my husband's a grill master. It's okay. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I think I've had some like food conniptions at times, just looking on Facebook and seeing some of the stuff that he's worked up. So that's awesome. Well, Shannon, you and I have been talking about, a lot of the things that are going on. And as someone who obviously is very active in the community and really someone who gives a damn about, life and the lives of other people, I've been watching. I had a close friend say to me, a friend, when I say close friend, I mean going all the way back to high school, saying, you've been kind of quiet on social media as it pertains to the things that are going on. And I said very specifically, one, because I've been, hey, Mark, because I've been observing and watching and paying attention to what's going on. Two, I've been, processing. And but most importantly, I've been working. I've been doing the work that I think that I need to and can do. And a big part of that is moving conversations forward. I've had some organizations like Braver Angels. Well, they used to be called Better Angels. Now they're called Braver Angels. And they bring together people of different, mostly political thought backgrounds. And they facilitate, conversations where there's a lot of respect and things that take place, but their goal isn't to change anybody's political affiliation, but to facilitate dialogue to move the conversation forward. And so that's something that I love. But again, I've been watching and observing, with all the things that are going on, having my own feelings, my own motivations, and wanting to, make sure that the things that I do, the things that I say, I want my life to have impact. I want my words to have impact. For me, that's what it's all about. I think that's, pretty much my purpose. But I've been as I've been watching and observing and listening, I have seen you and I have had some previous conversations about things. Um, and I wanted to ask you and get some of your thoughts on the things that are happening, really, globally, definitely in our nation, and all the way down to our community. I mean, I know that, you and I know and we're friends with, the mayor of Plano, Chief Ed Drain. So happy he's back. And I'm so
Yeah.
happy he's back, during this time. I mean,
During this, yeah.
because he's just, he's on the top level of humanity. You know, that's that's where I put a guy like that, for in every way, his heart, his intelligence, his compassion, just a great guy. But so from your perspective, as someone who's a leader in the community, someone who's working with nonprofits, with veterans, with women, all sorts of organizations, schools, um, how has all of this been impacting you, and what are the things that maybe you're getting involved in, and that's really pulling on your heart?
Yeah. I think that the best that I can do is seek to understand. I think that I'll never fully understand. I was listening to Ebony Janice this morning, and she said, there's three things that go into this. It's academia, so you can read about it, but then there's also that ancestry and that lived experience. And I don't have those other two things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the best I can do is seek to understand. I can read, I can have these conversations, I can reach out to my friends of color, my Black friends, and really just continue to seek to understand, and recognize that I will never fully understand, right?
Right.
I don't walk in those shoes, but I think that you just said having the dialogue, the conversations are
Yeah.
so very important right now. And I think that so often what we're seeing is people are just too afraid to speak for
Yeah.
fear of saying the wrong thing. And that just perpetuates the problem. We have
Right.
got to come together, and we've got to be willing to be vulnerable. We have to be willing to learn. And that takes dialogue.
It does. It does. And it takes a level of openness and vulnerability. I got into a somewhat of a charged conversation. This was several years ago. And I was at work in an office, and someone had come in and shared something on a video, and the issue, the statement of white privilege came up.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys, one of my employees, actually, I mean, he got upset. And really, just hearing those words really charged him up. He's like, just intense. And I looked at him and I said, I can imagine. I said, you've served, over 20 years in the military. You got, adult children and challenges, with them not being the humans that you had hoped that they would be by this time in their life. And, your wife has medical problems, all of these things that you experience in your life. And, you got out of the military, you went in, got your college degree, and now you're working, and, life isn't perfect for you. You're facing a lot of challenges, excuse me, dealing with, disability from the military. And, and I said, I can only imagine that when you hear someone say that you have white privilege, and it comes across as your life is easy, your life is a cakewalk, everything just comes to you, simply because you lack melanin in your skin. And so life is just a piece of cake. Eddie Murphy, this is, would be super controversial today, but a long time ago, Eddie Murphy did a skit to say, on Saturday Night Live, to say he wanted to see what it was like to be white, and they did the whole makeup thing, and and he goes through this whole skit, and and he's like, man, this is what they do when we're not around. They just walk into the bank, they give them money, pay it back, don't pay it back, whatever. I mean, it's just a hilarious skit, but I thought about that in this context, and I and I said to him, I said, it must be infuriating to you to feel like that there is a conversation and a narrative that invalidates your challenges, your struggle, the difficulties that you face in life. And I can see where that would upset you. And then I just let that hang there because, typically there's a but that comes on the end of those things. And people feel like that invalidates, what you said. I just let that hang there. And probably the 10 seconds of silence that happened after I said that brought that conversation down to a place where he could hear me because he felt like I understood him. And, but I can identify with that. It just like you said, in the way that he does, right? Because, he felt invalidated. He felt like, your people are acting like, the world is just, being handed to me. And so that is a truth, and it aligns with what you're saying. And that's, somebody told us that if we wanted to be highly effective people, that we should seek first to understand.
Definitely.
The Bible says, in all you're getting, get understanding. That's a big challenge. And that's one of the first hurdles in moving a dialogue forward. Last week, I shared a little bit about, because when I was in my early 20s, I was brilliant. I mean, there is almost nothing that I wasn't an expert on. and
wait till your kids get that age, by the way. Or even become teenagers, you will learn that you know nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I got two of them in their 20s, and they're already smarter than me. But and I had all of these great ideas about relationships and what it took, and I really was an authority on women and how they think and what they do and why and the motivations. And I was fully planning to be the perfect husband, the perfect son-in-law, all of these things, because I knew and I understood. I got married, started having children, and realized that I'm just a spectator in that game, and the best thing that I can do is learn. And so let's talk about, I know that, that one of the terms that's being used in this regard of what's happening with Black and brown skinned people in our nation, the conversations being had, and those that I think that you have embraced this term of being an ally in the things that we're facing right now, because it's not, as some would say, and I did have someone say, and maybe I'll refer to this. I had someone say to me in regards to this issue. This was a conversation several years ago about Colin Kaepernick. And I asked him about the issue that Colin Kaepernick is actually protesting about. And I asked him, what are you doing in regards to that? And he said, it's not my fight. It's not my issue.
Oh, yeah.
And,
yes.
And again, I always appreciate the honesty, in a conversation, because without that as a starting point, we're not going to move forward anyway. But as someone who in these circumstances has taken on the role of an ally and wanting to understand and learn, what are the challenges? What is the difficult part in being an ally in this situation?
Yeah, you've said so much that
I'm sorry.
No, that I'm like, oh yes. it's funny. Just when you said that somebody said it wasn't their fight, I remember probably the turning point for me was I went to a seminar and Suzanne Fallick was there, and she's part of the Racial Equity Institute, and she was being given an award for her work, and she's walking up to the podium, and I was just like, oh, here's another white person that's about to tell me about diversity and inclusion, and what does she know? And instead, she got up there and she said, I need to talk to all of the white women. It was just a conference for women, so I need to talk to all the white women in the audience and tell you that this is your problem. This is your problem. Stop asking your Black friends to explain it to you. Stop asking them how it feels. Stop asking them how to solve the issue. White people created racism. We created the systemic systems that keep all of this in place. And it's up for us to educate ourselves and to make this our problem. That your Black friends don't need your friendship. It's the friendship isn't helping them in this. It's your voice, and you have to get educated and you have to use your voice. And I was floored, because up until that point, I realized I wasn't getting into the arena because I didn't think it was my fight, right? I was putting that entire onus on my friends of color, and it was a spectator sport for me, right? I was watching thinking, oh man, that stinks that they have to go through all that. Not realizing that I'm part of that system, right? That it's up to me to get in the arena and truly be an ally and use my voice, just as we open this conversation, my time, talent, and treasures, and my voice in this fight. And I think you talked about privilege, and it's the nasty P word, right? It's just everybody tends to recoil at that word, thinking that, as you said, it invalidates their prior experiences, and that's not it at all. It's recognizing that there are certain times when the wind is at our back, and there's multiple kinds of privileges, right? I mean, there's racial privilege, there's you're male and I'm female. You have certain privileges. Wealth is certainly a privilege. Religion. There's so many different aspects to that give me a leg up or an invisible advantage in life. And you just have to, people say when they finally come around, or I beat them down into submission to say, oh yeah, that actually exists. And they say, well, what am I supposed to do with that now? Right? What do you want me to do? I can't not have that privilege. I can't not have this invisible thing. And I say, acknowledgement is definitely the first step. And then the second step is to become a questioner, right? To question, why don't other people have this advantage? Or, a resume crosses your desk and the name denotes a certain race, or the education, or certain things come across, and you find yourself judging based on perception as opposed to what's on that piece of paper. That is privilege. And that is when you need to stop and say, wait a second, my bias is coming out, and I need to stop and question, why am I doing this? Right?
Yeah. And again, this is that aspect of it is, as you said, that's not a Black issue or white issue or male issue or female. That is an issue of humanity. I remember saying out loud with my mouth, several elections or prior to several elections ago, when a name that I had never heard before became a serious candidate for the Democratic nomination. And I remember saying out loud, I do not believe that it is possible for someone with the name Barack Hussein Obama to become president of the United States. I don't believe that. I didn't know
Yeah.
anything about him as a state senator, as a senator, as a candidate, as a lawyer. I didn't know anything about him at that point. All I knew, all I heard was the name. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know what he looked like at that moment. But there was a simple judgment as a, Texan, as a Marine, as all the things that I am, that off of that name alone, certain judgments and thoughts. And at that point, most of it wasn't about him. It was about who I believed we were as a people. It had nothing, because I didn't have any knowledge of him, but recognizing that those things exist in every single one of us. And if that extrapolates into institutions, if it extrapolates, as you say, in job applications and all of these other things, and I think that you and I may have had a brief online conversation about the, what is it? It's the Harvard implicit bias.
Yes,
the
test.
You did that, didn't you?
Yeah, and there's multiple ones, right? I mean, there's race, there's one on guns. I mean, it is, it's very eye-opening.
Yeah. Well, what was your experience? And I mean, how did that impact you as far as Shannon? What did it make you see, if anything, that you might want to share?
Yeah, it was interesting. And for those who haven't taken it, it's more than just questions. It's more of association and the timing. And so the timing is really important, because the timing indicates that you're hesitating before you choose the right answer. And so you're kind of fighting that bias, right? And so it was extremely eye-opening. And very interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, because it's, when you talk about the timing, so it says, which one do you like better, an apple or an orange, right? Yeah. What do you like better, chicken or steak? Which tastes better, steak or orange? And then when you hear steak and orange, you don't have that natural connection between those two, chicken and steak. Most of us will instantly choose one or the other. But apple and chicken, somehow we don't have that correlation. And so I think it's amazing and very helpful, because I think a big part of this conversation and one of the challenges, and I think one of the fears that most of us have, because I mean, I'm listening to what you're saying, but I mean, you're not a bad person. You're not, you as far as I can tell, you've never been a bad person. But some of it, it's like, if I get into this conversation and I find out, or I admit that there's a problem, then what does that say about me? What does that say about my community? Because here's the challenge, and let me be realistic about this. I have, this beautiful 6-year-old son who is just the most amazing dude on the planet, right?
Mr. Tripp.
Yeah, Mr. Tripp, right? Urshel Metcalf III. And I want every opportunity. I want every advantage for him. I want him to, my dad used to tell me when I was a kid, and now I think about it in a totally different way. He used to say, Junior, you could leap over buildings in a single bound, all of this Superman stuff. And I think about that in regards to my son now, and I want to kick down doors for him so he can kick down bigger doors. I want him to have every possible advantage and opportunity that life has to offer. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong. And let's talk about that nice and kind thing, because we were talking about that yesterday, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk going on right now, and people just say, oh, just be kind. If people are just kind, then this will work its way out, work itself out. And I told you that when I first started this work, I was there. I'm the nice and kind girl, right? I was raised to be nice and kind. We raise our children to be nice and kind.
Yeah.
And so when you heard diversity and inclusion, you thought, oh, I'm nice and kind. I just want to invite you to my table, and I've solved the issue.
Right.
And I want to have diversity at my table. I want to invite you to my table. But I don't want to do the work, right? And that's why we have the equity piece on this now, right? Is you got to do the work, because just inviting you to the table without acknowledging the hurt and the past, by saying, Urshel, you and I weren't around 400 years ago, so let's not address the whole slavery thing that happened, because it wasn't you and me. Let's just look forward. And that is putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. Until I actually do the work, until I actually get past the nice and kind. And as you and I were talking about yesterday, nice and kind's table stakes now. Of course you should be nice and kind.
Right.
That's the very base amount that you should do. But we've got to do the work to understand that there are systems and processes in place that need to be disbanded in order for us to actually move forward as a human race. And you're right. It's a humanity issue.
It is. I've in discussing racial things in the past, one of the examples that I've talked about is, in Rwanda, in the genocide that took place there, and the fighting between the Tutsis and the Hutus. One of the primary distinguishing characters between the two of people who, in a lot of ways, were exactly the same, from the same place, same skin color, was the width of their nose. So this human issue of whether it's insecurity or hatred or whatever that causes us to find a difference, and then whether it's in Ireland and the Protestants and the Catholic, whoever is fighting against whoever, in all of time and in all of humanity, we'll find that difference. If we all, if it just came down to eye color, we would find that difference. And then the broken part of us wants to make the other bad. So it's not about that. It's about saying what I've said my whole life, has been a part of me. As far as we think about our history as a Marine, you have military in your family. How many times, honestly, have we fought as the United States military? How many times have we fought our own battles, right? Because someone was attacking our shores, right? So that doesn't really happen. So we're either protecting our interests in other places, but really what we're primarily doing is we're fighting other people's battles. When I went to Desert Shield and Desert Storm, we went there because we were helping Saudi Arabia get back what was taken from them from Iraq, right? And so that concept is not foreign to me at all, to say this is someone else's fight and I may have an interest in it, and that interest may be a global interest. For me, growing up as a kid, if you picked on a girl, if you picked on, one of the kids that was weaker or whatever, you got to fight Junior Metcalf. You got to meet Junior Metcalf under the bridge. And that was like, 80% of the fights that I had. And I had a lot, growing up, because that's who I saw myself as. And so when we look at this as Americans, and let me say this, when we look at this as patriots, as people who passionately love our country, to me, my opinion is that we can't look at a fight and say, you know what? I hope you guys, I hope you
Right.
come through this. I hope it's not enough if we are who we say we are. If we love our country, if that pledge means something to us. And again, I'm not here to question anyone's patriotism, but I'm here to say, when I look at those words, when I listen to those words, I don't have to be told to, when I see a car accident, I don't have to be told to go help someone, right? And to join in a situation that, you know, is bad for someone else. But going back to my son and wanting to give him every advantage possible, the question is, if the advantages that I give him somehow hurt someone else, and I know that it wasn't my fault. I didn't put that system in place.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't create this circumstance. And again, we can't go back, and this is part of the conversation. We can't go back 400 years ago and change slavery. We can't go back and fix Jim Crow, right? We can't go back to the 60s. We can't unassassinate Martin Luther King Jr., right?
Mm-hmm.
We can't do any of those things. But do we have to today, all of us, say, as a result of these things? Because what I hear a lot of, and tell me what you think about this, what I hear a lot of is people saying, well, the problems in this community, the economic issues in this community is this, right? The problems that exist are the result of this. And then they stop there, right? That's where the conversation is. It's, how many, well, let's just be real. How many, children in the Black and brown community are being raised in single parent homes, right? Okay, so that's an issue. And the result of that issue, it wasn't my issue. I wasn't raised that way. I was raised with a mother and a father who were married until death parted them. And, my dad, had a good career. My mom, worked. So that wasn't my circumstance. But if I look at that issue and say, okay, what has contributed to that?
Right.
What has created these circumstances? And if at some point I can say, here is an issue, and let's say that issue was institutional. Let's say there was legislation that created this issue and it was purposeful. Is it enough to say, well, let's stop doing that? Let's stop this issue. Let's stop redlining and making it more difficult to buy homes. And see, we stopped that. We stopped slavery. We stopped, doing this. So we're good, right? That, and that's where the conversation stops, because we can assign it to the past, and then it takes away our responsibility to do something today.
Yeah, it's definitely peeling the onion,
Yeah.
It's, redlining beget the predatory loan practices, beget underfunding of inner city schools, beget, and which leads to less representation, less generational wealth. Then we have things like the war on drugs and mass incarceration and so many things. It's just this onion that you keep pulling back, and it is so prevalent and intertwined with so many aspects of our society that you're right. Doing away with one doesn't solve the problem. At the end of the day, I think you may have this statistic better than I do, that today, on average, Black families are approximately, I think it's 30 years behind white families as far as generational wealth. And
Mm-hmm.
just, so there's still a gap. There's still that gap that we have to make up. And how do we do that? How do I actually leapfrog you into that equity position? Because as you and I had the conversation that I shouldn't have to Google Black-owned businesses or be desperate to find some resource out there. Black-owned businesses, Black-owned, and that's restaurants, banks, that's every piece of our economic engine. We need to have just as strong a Black economy as we do white economy, and that's how we're going to achieve equity, right? True equity, and we have to protect it. And I think that's interesting when people find out about Tulsa and Rosewood and so many of these other instances where the Black community has actually had this economic engine, and it has been just shattered and broken down. The white America needs to be comfortable with it and protect it. And I think it's so funny. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place because
No.
I have all
This
these
is great.
conversations. When you talk about Rwanda and things happening outside the United States, it's so funny to me how we can point to other countries and say, I know how to solve their issues, but we don't use that same reasoning for our own issues in our own backyard. And we can look at these third world countries and say, oh, you're oppressing your women. If you just educated your women and you gave your women the ability to own business and create economic wealth, your whole economy as a country is going to come up. And it's fascinating that we don't see that happening in our own backyard. That I need to bring up the economic engine as a whole, which would just revolutionize our entire American economy. And
so what do you say? I'm just checking to see who's jumping in there. So what do you say, and how do you, when you say these things? Okay, so if you think we need to do something to identify, to help to build the Black economy, then one of the things that I think is almost an instant response is, well, why do we have to make it about Black and white? Why can't we just be one? Why can't we just all, work hard? Why can't we all just, focus on the situation that we have today, and single out, because that's somehow separating us if we focus on, women, or we focus on, I've heard this issue discussed, why do we have a Women's Veterans Day? Why do we have this and that? We're all just veterans. We all wore the same uniform. Do you feel like it's divisive in the sense of when we say, well, we want to specifically target this community to not only move it forward, but to empower in itself?
Well, and again, here I am, the white girl on the show, so forgive me. I'm seeking to understand. Okay. But I think that I would argue that that's the same as when people say all lives matter, right? Mm-hmm. All lives can't matter until Black lives matter, until brown lives matter, until all of these things happen. You can't say that. You don't have that. And people will use the parable of the lost sheep from the Bible, or the prodigal son. The shepherd left his flock of 99 to go find and rescue the one that was lost, the prodigal son. The father said, he has come back to me and was tending to the one that needed the most at the time. And that is just going to raise everyone up. It's not one at the sake of the other. I think that it does serve all of us when we can bring everyone up to the same level. Everyone.
And maybe that's the missing part of the conversation. Maybe that's the part that somehow isn't being communicated more effectively. Maybe that's what we need some of the voices to say, listen, we're not talking about taking anything away from anyone else. This isn't Robin Hood. This isn't, stealing from the rich to give to the poor. This is saying, now think about it. If we have a segment of our population that medically is that deals with, you know, less economic empowerment, more disease, more health issues, all of these things, if that's a reality, then that becomes a drain, a burden on the society. Because again, you know, the medical issues, if someone goes to the hospital and they don't have insurance and they go to a public hospital and they don't have the ability to pay, then, you know, that public hospital is going to be funded through taxpayer money, right? So again, you know, it's not like the issues don't exist, but if all of a sudden we empower these people, this group here, to have better health and to have health insurance and to be better educated on how to take care of their bodies and deal with things, and all of a sudden that liability that comes from that community goes down, then where the source of money was coming from anyway, there's a relief there. So it's better for everyone. You know,
Yes.
all ships rise
Yes.
under those circumstances, instead of a mentality that says, well, if we help here, then somehow we're hurting over
Right.
here. And and I mentioned in our conversation, and just give me a funny look if I start going too far, because I've been very careful about this specific area. But I participate in something that I know that you're aware of as well, and participated in a situation where we created a simulated existence of people, right? And people were randomly assigned to different, to I think 4 different aspects of community,
sectors
right?
of the society.
Sectors of the society. And I happened to be put in the sector of society where we had no jobs, no money, no transportation. I mean, we literally, the only thing we had was the ability to have a voice and to vote as the society moved forward. And this was such a moving and powerful experience. But one of the things that came out of it, and again, we were all randomly assigned. One of the things that came out of it, from my perspective, as we tried to do everything to have our own sustenance, our own ability to take care of ourselves, our own businesses, our own factories, through this. And this was this felt so real as we went through this process. At the end of it, you know, one of the things that I had to say to some of the other sectors of society is that you kept telling us what we needed. You kept coming to us, asking us for the only thing that we had. You wanted our votes. You wanted our support. And you kept telling us. And one person even said, that was from the most affluent sector. One person said, you guys are greedy, and pigs get fed and hogs get slaughtered. I mean, that is a literal quote that was said to us in that context. And I said, you know, all we wanted was the ability to have what you have.
Yeah.
We didn't want to be dependent. We just wanted autonomy. And we wanted, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's funny because, it's a simulated society experiment that we do every year through Leadership Plano. I know a lot of other leadership programs do it. And the group is divided among sectors of the society. And the marginalized community, in almost every instance when I have seen this done, the more affluent part of the community comes in and says, we're going to bestow upon you these gifts, right? Without saying, what do you need? What I want to sit down and I want to learn. I mean, it's funny that you said that that the marginalized community in this experiment definitely had the right to vote. You said you also had a voice, but because you didn't have the ability to travel or other things, you only had the voice as it was in your room. If somebody
Yeah.
came to your segment of society and sat there and wanted to learn and seek to understand.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, you know, in this conversation, I have to, I find myself, okay, back up a little bit. I mean, I can say from an academia perspective that that building economic engines makes sense, but
Mm-hmm.
again, that ancestry and that lived experience is so very important. And then seeking to understand, what do marginalized communities want and need, and how do they want to go about that? We can't just go in and save marginalized communities. That's not how this works, right?
Yeah. 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 And I find that most people don't want that in any concept. They don't. When I moved home in 2009, it was a great time to be changing careers, right, economically. And so I found myself in an industry that's always hiring, and that was the insurance industry. And they're always hiring because they're always losing people. And and I did really well. I had, some skills that, helped me to be successful. And so they were always running these competitions. We had March Madness competitions and all of these things. And as a result, if you performed at a certain level, if you did this, you did that, I mean, in my, first year and a half back in Dallas, I ate at almost, every great steakhouse. I didn't attend a professional sporting event unless I was in a suite. I mean, so I got to, all of these perks. I made it into the Elite Eight. I did this, I did that, and then I remember, after a little over a year, and one of the people that was taking us, to all of these great places, and paying the bill and spending all of that money on us and making us feel awesome and giving us these great experiences, said, I just, really, I want you to know how much we value and appreciate, the hard work that you put in. And, that's why it's worth it to me to spend, $1,500 on a dinner or da 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 da. And I said, well, it's not worth it to me. I said, because, I appreciate the experiences in and of themselves, but what I don't appreciate is that for me to have this experience, you have to bring me. I may or may not want to attend the Dallas Cowboys game with you. I may want to attend it with, people in my house, or I may want to attend it with, my friends from high school. I don't want to be dependent on you to take me to these circumstances. Right. I want to be able to have my own suite at the Cowboy Stadium if I want to. And again, there's nothing wrong with either side of that, unless you're happy with me being in a place that I don't necessarily want to be in, right?
And I'm happy with you being dependent on. Yeah.
And you shouldn't be happy with that, and I shouldn't be happy with that. Yeah, and so that becomes really this understanding of realizing it's not enough, and we can talk about pull yourself up by your bootstraps and all of these other things. But what we really, in this conversation, we really have to be honest to be able to say, look, this is where we are. And at this point, as we sit here, you, me, and everybody else, it isn't about the blame game anymore. Mm-hmm. It isn't about, there is some needs to be conversation about how we got here and why, and we don't have to disregard the progress. We don't have to diminish how far we've come, right? We don't have to pretend that, we are not so much better than we've ever been. One of the more ludicrous statements that I hear from time to time is, we're more racially divided in this country than we've ever been. I think you have to be an idiot to say that. I think you have to shut your brain off, and you have to want to feel better than the current circumstances will let you feel, to say something like that because you want to point to another problem. Obviously, we're not more racially divided than we've ever been, but we have more voices. We have more people that have to be heard. And we got everybody walking around with HD live streaming cameras in their hand. So we know things now that we wouldn't have known globally before. And it's better to know, in my opinion, it's better to know this is where we are. Thank God for the progress that we made. Thank God that we can have this conversation. Thank God that these things can be exposed. And as I said on the show last week, now, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do with it?
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, what? Just tell me, you know, as we sit here today and all the things that are going on in our community, in our country, what are the things that you want, you know, people that hear your voice today? What are the things that you would like for them as you're growing and understanding and you're taking action and doing what Shannon does? You know, Shannon, you know, Shannon makes stuff happen, right?
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Well,
I think that it's just so important for us to continue I love that the theme of our conversation today has been seek to understand, because it is just so vitally important that everybody gets into this arena, understands that you might not be fully equipped, you might not have all the equipment to be in the arena, you might not understand how the game is played, you might not know all these things, but you can get in and you can start doing the work and you can seek to understand.
Yeah.
And that is probably the best thing that we can ask of anybody right now, is to just get in there, start doing the work, look inside yourself too, and start being a questioner. Why do I think this way? Why are these systems this way? What led up to this point? And it doesn't, I think that sometimes our society wants to push us in this binary pick a side mentality, right? You're either Republican or you're Democrat. You're either for this or you're against it. And I think that in this particular instance, there's a lot of both and. You can be both happy about the progress that has been made and recognize there's still work to be done.
Right.
You can be grateful of certain things and be disappointed that more steps hadn't been taken, that it didn't go far enough.
Right.
And be comfortable with that both ands. I'm not asking, we're not asking people to pick this set of this doctrine and say, absolutely, we're all in, not that we have time and not that we want to get down into the abolish the police, but it's not an either or, right?
Right.
You can be so proud of our military, and you can be thankful of, as we start out this conversation, that we have someone like Chief Drain in the Plano Police Department, and feel like there's still work to be done.
Right. Yeah.
And we need to seek to understand.
Yeah. And I think I really think that's about as brilliantly as it can be stated. And we can be proud of that. We can be proud of both the progress and recognizing the need for work. But in my opinion, what we can't be is lazy. And what we can't be is divisive. And lazy says, there's nothing for me to do. Lazy says, there's nothing else for me to learn. When I hear something I agree with, I should probably question it a little bit. If I hear something I don't agree with, I should probably research it and try to get more information, because I don't know anybody who wakes up and says, I want to know how wrong I can be today. I want to have all the wrong opinions. I want to be on the wrong side of history. I don't know anybody that wakes up and says that. But we all need to wake up and say, how can I be better? And how can I make it better for the people around me? Because if I do that, if I make it better for the people around me by default, I'm making it better for myself, for my children, for our country, and for our future. And that's where I feel like the real patriotism, the real love for our country, and the real love for humanity comes out of that, saying, what can I do to make it better? Shannon, I absolutely adore you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being that ear and always listening to me when I needed to bounce some ideas around. And I just so appreciate you and your voice in this in our community. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time to have this difficult conversation, because it's not easy for a lot of people to learn and to experience that. And we'll see what the outcome is, but we'll keep talking and making a difference. Have a great day. Go out and make a difference.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.